Distracted driving is deadly. Teens? Yes, but adults too, and there are millions more adults than teens. Arrive alive. Let's end distracted driving.
Learn more at waynehogan.law.
Baptist Health is a proud sponsor of First Coast Connect with Melissa Ross. Tune in to WJCT News 89.9 Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. and 8 p.m.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.
Florida COVID cases are spiking once again, so why isn't the state providing more timely data? I'm Melissa Ross. Just ahead this hour on First Coast Connect, a closer look at the lawsuit filed against the Florida Department of Health over its release of positive COVID cases numbers. That's coming up. Then later,
what would you like to have happen in this situation if it were you over there or if you were transported out of your country? And the answer is you'd like to be treated as a friend, as a neighbor, as a brother or sister.
More Afghan refugees are coming to Jacksonville. A conversation with Catholic Charities about their refugee resettlement efforts. Plus, a look ahead to this Saturday's 904 Day in the city and how you can be part of it. That and more, all ahead. After the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Texas has a far-reaching new law that bans nearly all abortions in that state. It blocks the procedure at about 6 weeks of pregnancy before many people know they're pregnant. The law goes a lot further. It allows anyone to sue a person who helps anybody obtain an abortion, such as driving them to a clinic. Professor Elizabeth Sepper is at the University of Texas School of Law.
It really tips the balance in favor of private vigilantes in ways that mean they can file lawsuits harassing people based on suspicion that they might have donated to an abortion fund, for example, or driven someone to an abortion.
She says there's more to the Texas law. Anti-abortion activists can sue anybody who intends to help a person get an abortion, even if they don't do anything. She describes that as a thought crime. The main power company in New Orleans says it has restored some electricity this morning to the eastern part of the city. NPR's Debbie Elliott reports the power has been out there since Sunday when Hurricane Ida made landfall on the Gulf Coast.
Thousands of linemen are working to repair downed lines and power poles, but the challenge is main transmission lines are not operating. Entergy, which provides electricity to New Orleans, says that the priority will be in critical corridors near hospitals, for instance. Curfews are in place in New Orleans and other southeast Louisiana communities. Police say they've made arrests for looting. The city of New Orleans is setting up cooling centers and using public buses as mobile cooling stations. People have waited in hours-long lines to get gas, water, and ice. More public distribution points are set to come online today. Debbie Elliott, NPR News.
Currently, Tropical Depression Ida is raining heavily from Virginia up into New England. Flood warnings are posted for Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. There is a risk of tornadoes today across the mid-Atlantic. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky heads to the White House today. He'll speak with President Biden. From Moscow, NPR's Charles Maines has this preview of their visit.
Zelensky's visit to the White House comes later than planned. An invitation from former President Donald Trump in 2019 never materialized because of Ukraine's role in his impeachment scandal, and President Biden postponed it another 2 days to focus on Afghanistan. The two leaders are set to discuss economic and military aid for Ukraine, as well as clarification on its bid for NATO membership, as Kyiv seeks security guarantees from Russian aggression on its eastern border. Other likely topics include Ukraine's fight against corruption and concerns over a Kremlin pipeline project that allows Russian gas to bypass Ukraine to Europe. For Biden, in the wake of the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, he's eager to show U.S. alliances still matter. Charles Maines, NPR News, Moscow.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good morning, 4 minutes after 9. This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. While Florida politicians and judges battle over whether children should wear masks in the state schools, the number of children hospitalized with COVID-19 has risen dramatically. Although pediatric hospitalizations and deaths remain a small fraction of Florida's overall numbers, they are exponentially higher than they were during previous waves of the disease. Federal officials say about 60 children are being admitted per day to Florida hospitals for COVID-19. Florida is launching a new tree planting grant program that's aimed at helping the state fight climate change. Agriculture Commissioner Nikki Fried yesterday announced what she's calling the Sequestering Carbon and Protecting Florida Land Program. She says it will give out about $10 million over 5 years to help plant trees throughout the state.
Through this program, we hope to sequester up to 69,000 tons of carbon dioxide over a 5-year span, equivalent to taking 3,000 cars off of our roads every single year.
Eligible applicants for the program include local governments, nonprofits, and non-industrial private landowners like family farms. The grants can cover up to 3/4 of the average costs of planting trees. And right now we have drizzle here in downtown Jacksonville. Showers and thunderstorms likely before 3 today. Mostly cloudy and breezy from the southwest. Temperatures in the upper 80s down to the mid-70s tonight.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and Jarl and Pamela Mohn, thanking the people who make public radio great every day, and also those who listen.
Thanks to the Delta variant, COVID cases are spiking once again in Florida. So why isn't the state releasing more timely data about who's getting sick? Good morning. We're live from Studio 5. I'm Melissa Ross, and this is First Coast Connect. Thanks for listening. Just ahead this hour, a closer look at the new lawsuit accusing the state of keeping vital COVID data from the public. Give us a call now, 549-2937. Then later, we'll tell you how you can celebrate 904 Day this Labor Day weekend here in Jacksonville and beyond. But first this hour, a state lawmaker and a nonprofit group have filed a lawsuit alleging the Florida Department of Health is violating public records laws by refusing to provide detailed data about the pandemic in this state. Representative Carlos Guillermo Smith, D. Orlando, and the Florida Center for Government Accountability filed the lawsuit Monday in Leon County after Healthy Florida rebuffed their request for information. Now, the lawsuit alleges that the state health department and Surgeon General Scott Rivkees, who's actually stepping down from his job, have violated the state's robust public records laws at a time when the Delta variant of the virus is causing cases, hospitalizations, and deaths to surge here in Florida. Representative Carlos Smith is on the line now with more about this. Representative Smith, good to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me here this morning, Melissa. I appreciate it.
And as we talk about this lawsuit, give us a call. What we're talking about, folks, is whether the state should be more transparent in releasing COVID data to the public. This is of great interest to everyone, especially schools right now, with so many kids now going into quarantine, parents feeling that they're not getting timely information about who their child has been exposed to, who might be positive for COVID. Sound familiar? Give us a call, 549-2937. Emails to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Tweets to @MelissaInJax. So, Representative Smith, you filed this lawsuit along with the Florida Center for Government Accountability because the state wouldn't give you information. What information were you asking for?
Right. Well, I think it's important to underscore that right now in Florida, we've reached frightening levels of COVID-19. We continue to break records on new cases and hospitalizations across the state, particularly surging cases of pediatrics children who are coming down with COVID. The specific records that we asked for were the same records that used to be available through the state's daily COVID dashboard. Your listeners will remember that for almost a year through the pandemic, they were able to go to a Department of Health website for the state that had an easy to understand and easily accessible dashboard at their fingertips to get all types of information on what was happening at the local level with COVID, local hospitalizations broken down by age and other demographics, local case counts as well, broken down by zip code. We were trying to seek some of the same information for the area that I represent in the Florida House, which is Orange County in Orlando. And the state unlawfully denied our public records request by stating confidentiality, that the records were somehow confidential and not eligible to be released. This is totally false. And we gave them every opportunity not only to explain why they were confidential, because keep in mind, we're not asking for patient names or patient social security numbers. We're asking for raw numbers. For example, where do we go to find out how many children are currently hospitalized with COVID in my area in Orange County or in Duval County, for example? Where do you go to get that information? It's not available in the weekly report, which provides a statewide summary of hospitalizations, and it doesn't break it down by region and by age. And you can't find it on the CDC website provided by HHS because the state doesn't provide that level of detail since they removed the daily dashboard that used to be available in early June. They took it down. So we gave the state every chance, Melissa, to comply with our lawful records requests because we all understand that Floridians have the right to receive critical public health data in a timely manner in order to make informed decisions to protect the health and safety of their families. That's not been happening. The DeSantis administration just consistently refuses to release COVID-related public records, which not only hurts our efforts as a state to contain the virus by understanding what's going on around us and how we can appropriately respond to it. His rejection of lawful public records requests is actually unlawful. That's why we're suing. We're suing the State Department of Health to obtain those records for our constituents who are entitled to that under Article 1, Section 24A of the Florida Constitution, and to force the state to resume that daily dashboard reporting and avoid future litigation on this issue.
549-2937. What's the legal argument the state is making saying these records are confidential when for the first year or so of the pandemic, Representative Smith, we were getting daily case counts? Why are they now suddenly confidential?
That's right. And I want to be really clear about what we're asking for. If we're asking for a daily breakdown of what age groups in Orange County are contracting COVID, what age groups are being hospitalized with COVID on the daily basis in Orange County, that's not confidential information. We're asking for raw numbers. I'll throw a number out there. I'm wanting to know, do we have 20 children hospitalized with COVID in Orange County today, or do we have 50? The state is arguing that that number is confidential and not subject to public record, which of course is totally bogus because we have to remember that they voluntarily disclose this information for up to a year every day on the COVID dashboard. So if it's confidential now, why was it not confidential then? It doesn't add up, and it's because the state is being dishonest. And unfortunately, because of their repeated pattern of denying lawful records requests, particularly around COVID data, especially to members of the press and members of the media, we've seen that the DeSantis administration usually only hands over public records data related to COVID when they're sued, which is a sad state of affairs, but we exhausted every avenue to try to get these records without litigation, and they just refuse to cooperate. So I'm not backing down. My constituents deserve this public health information. They have a constitutional right to it, and if I have to sue them now or sue them again, I'm going to do that because we need the information.
It's 549-2937 to join us. Representative Smith, can you explain why this data is important, particularly for parents? You know, yesterday I went to my daughter's high school to pick her up early to take her to the dentist. And in front of me was a woman waiting to speak to the desk assistant. And she said, my daughter feels sick and she thinks she was exposed to somebody here in the school who's positive, but we don't know if this child is positive. And we haven't heard anything from the school yet. And when I called the other day, the school told me, well, we have to wait for the Department of Health first. There's a lag time, in other words, between when a school assesses a positivity rate and when the parents are notified. This is causing extreme anxiety on the part of parents. Can you talk a little bit about your lawsuit in that context?
Right. Well, in the context of trying to get detailed information, the reason that I originally filed the public records request, which of course the DeSantis administration denied unlawfully, was because I had a local school board member here in Orange County who reached out to me and said, Carlos, we're trying to develop the best masking policy for Orange County public schools that we can, but we don't have access to information. We don't know on a daily basis how many kids in our area are contracting COVID, particularly under the age of 12, where we know they can't get vaccinated, and we don't know how many have been hospitalized. Now, folks would assume that elected school board leaders, the school superintendent, would have access to detailed information on how COVID is impacting children in their area. But we don't have it because the state's daily dashboard went away. Now, if we can reinstate that daily dashboard, which the DeSantis administration took down in early June, I think it would help facilitate not only the flow of information, but can also certainly help identify local trends. And we expect that it will help the State Department of Health disseminate information back to the school districts more quickly so that, of course, they can more quickly respond to what's happening in their schools. And we're hearing about those types of cases like the one that you described, where it's just taking an extraordinary amount of time to assess, which students have been exposed. Our Department of Health, our County Department of Health, don't have sufficient staff to do contact tracing. That's really a big, big part of this, which unfortunately our lawsuit doesn't address. But we know we're in a state of crisis. So I think a first step is going to be the governor acknowledging we're in a state of crisis once again by declaring a state of emergency.
What about that? The governor has consistently refused to declare a state of emergency. And certainly he may have political calculations behind that, Representative Smith, given that as he seeks re-election as governor next year, it's widely assumed he's also trying to position himself to run for president in 3 years.
Right. And that's unfortunate because the governor consistently prioritizes politics over people. Some folks may look at a state of emergency declared by the governor as just another piece of paper. It's not. Here locally in Orange County, it's been reported that one of our hospital systems specifically has run out of room in their morgue to store bodies of those who passed from COVID-19. They have rented additional mobile freezers to help with the storage of the bodies. And I know that's a really cryptic sight for people to imagine, but that's what's happening here locally. And what the hospitals have told us, Melissa, is that because we're not in a declared state of disaster or state of emergency, they are not able to request additional resources to be able to give them support so that they can properly make sure that those bodies go over where they're supposed to go to leave the hospital and actually go to funeral homes and obviously that their wishes can be respected by their families properly and in a timely manner. That's the consequence of not declaring a state of emergency. Again, other than just putting people in the mindset that everything's fine, you don't have to wear your mask, you don't have to get a vaccine, you don't have to social distance. It's not true. Of course, the most important tool we have right now is a vaccination to inoculate ourselves and protect ourselves from COVID. But things like universal masking policies in schools, which the governor is punishing school districts doing is something that we have to do right now in order to mitigate even the flow of hospitalizations due to COVID.
We're speaking with Representative Carlos Smith of Central Florida, as he and a nonprofit have sued the state over its refusal to provide daily case counts and positivity rates around COVID in Florida. It is public information. 5492937. May tweets the show, because of the state's voodoo math, some people think COVID is going away just when the Delta variant is becoming more deadly as unvaxxed people fill up hospitals, begging for life-saving medical care in one of our many overwhelmed hospital sites. You know, the Miami Herald reported this week, Representative Smith, that the state has actually been using a bit of sleight of hand in its reporting of data around COVID, purportedly to make it look as though the numbers are trending downward more sharply than they actually are. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that was really unfortunate and kind of outrageous because it was not really widely publicized that the state was changing their methodology for how they reported COVID deaths. For most of the duration of the pandemic, the state would record COVID deaths when they found out about them. It often takes more than a week, sometimes up to 2 weeks after a death occurs for the state to know or be notified that it was a COVID-caused death. And so what we see is a late wave of COVID deaths that are reported to the state that don't necessarily correlate with the day the death happened. Now, overnight, it appears the state decided to switch that methodology to instead report deaths on the date that they occurred and attribute it to the date that it happened. Now, to be fair, I think it's important that the public, one, knows what they're looking at and the context of the numbers that they're looking at so that they can better understand them, but two, have access to both metrics, both methodologies of determining death count to have a good understanding of what's happening in their area. But the state really didn't publicize the change, and it created the perception, the artificial perception, because it takes so long for them to discover a COVID-related death, that deaths related to COVID were on the decline, that there was a low number of deaths happening during this surge and during this crisis that actually gives people a false sense of what's actually going on. We need the state to be more transparent. And actually, back to the dashboard, not to sound like a broken record, when we had the dashboard, the COVID dashboard that the state published for almost a year, both methodologies of death reporting related to COVID were available on the website for people to see and understand and be able to put in context. So a lot of this confusion and misinformation as it relates to COVID data in Florida can be solved by reinstating that and seeks to do.
Reinstating that. And do you feel that maybe the state has made this move because there's a sentiment, at least among some Florida residents, that they just want to move on as though this is all over with, even though it's not?
That's right. It's whistling past the graveyard. You know, the governor has taken this head in the sand approach to leadership during a public health crisis, and it has certainly not served Floridians well. You know, we see this petty vendetta that the governor and our education commissioner, Richard Corcoran, have pursued against school districts who defy their unconstitutional executive orders. You know, I'm talking about, of course, the executive order the governor signed that was declared unconstitutional by Judge Cooper last week on mask mandates not being allowed in our public schools. I mean, look, the reality is that universal masking works. There's lots of science behind it, a number of studies that prove its efficacy in protecting children in particular from transmitting COVID in our public school settings. And the idea that during this crisis, while we're seeing pediatric cases and hospitalizations rising before our eyes in the state of Florida, the idea that we would punish school districts for protecting those children with universal masking mandates makes no sense and the governor needs to get out of the way if he's not going to help us mitigate the transmission of COVID in the state.
We'll go to your calls in a moment. Here's a tweet, though, for you, Representative Smith. Can you ask the representative about the state's failure with applying for food and education assistance and why so much of the renter's assistance hasn't been given out? There are billions on the table that could actually help people that the state has just ignored. Rep. Smith.
That's right. That's a great question, actually. It's inexplicable to me why we have over $800 million in food assistance for hungry kids that has not been dispersed by the DeSantis administration. We've seen a incoherent rationale for why they've not dispersed it. The governor's press secretary, I think it was just yesterday or the day before, basically said that now that children are no longer in virtual online classes and are back to face instruction, they no longer need this type of assistance for food and nutritious meals, which is an incoherent response. I don't see the connection between online schooling and face-to-face instruction means they suddenly are not hungry anymore and don't need food assistance. That doesn't really make any sense. And it's because they're trying to defend the indefensible. And as it relates to the rental assistance, there is so much assistance available for those folks who were impacted by COVID-19. Maybe they lost their job, they had their hours reduced, they've been struggling to pay their rent. If you go to ourflorida.com, folks can easily apply for rental assistance to be able to pay their outstanding rent so that they can stay in their homes, that they don't get evicted. And I would encourage the state to, take a more active role in promoting these types of assistance programs because the help is there. We know the need is there as well. People need it. We just need to be talking more about it, and folks can apply for that rental assistance by going to ourflorida.com.
549-2937. Susan in Mandarin. Hello, Susan.
I was wondering if Representative Smith would give us his opinion on why he thinks Governor DeSantis and his DeSantis's appointed State Board of Education is doing this to the neighborhood schools, because they've created this rule that seems like it's preventing the school boards from making them from choosing the safest option for our neighborhoods and magnet schools. But he's not imposing this on charter schools or voucher-funded private schools, and it just makes me wonder if he's doing this to try to get more political contributions from the charter school industry. And I wonder how much danger the charter school industry is imposing on our neighborhood schools. Thank you.
Let's talk about, go ahead, Representative Smith.
Well, I was going to say, it's a great question because a few weeks ago it was announced that the State Board of Education, basically they had an emergency meeting and they said, hey, listen, we understand that they made up this term. I'm trying to remember what the term was. It's COVID harassment. They said we cannot subject parents and students to COVID-19 harassment. I don't even know what that means, but basically what they were saying is asking a student to wear a mask during a deadly pandemic in school, which they didn't have any problems doing for many, many months leading up to this, certainly in the face-to-face instruction.
Well, yeah, that gets back to what I was saying a minute ago, which is that there's this sentiment among maybe half the population, 40% of the population, that we're done with this, even though the facts belie that. The Delta variant is even worse. We're not done with this. But there's this unwillingness among some parents and just some Florida residents to continue masking up, to continue social distancing. They want to wish this away, it seems, but it's not done.
And
we're not done.
It's easier for them to do that. It's easier for them to do that, of course, when the state is not being transparent with COVID reporting, which gets me back to my lawsuit. But on the issue of the vouchers, because I think that our listener who called in made a really good point. The State Board of Education announced that they were going to offer taxpayer-funded vouchers for parents to pull their kid out of school if they didn't like a mask rule and send them to private school on the taxpayer's dime. Now, let's just be clear. The private schools, a lot of them have mask mandates too. So this appears to have the effect of just draining money out of our public schools because we know the money follows the child. And we're using taxpayer money with this new program that they announced to literally pay for a child's private school tuition, regardless of what their masking policy is, which just doesn't make any sense. It's not sound public policy. What we need to be doing is we need to be requiring our public schools to, follow CDC guidance. But of course, we elect local school board members to make these decisions for their communities. There's a reason why they're elected, because we understand government and school boards that are closest to the people understand the needs of their communities best. It's not up to Tallahassee, the governor, Commissioner Corcoran, to come in and create this blanket rule.
We did learn overnight Commissioner Corcoran is targeting the Duval County School Board, along with a few other school boards, after they voted to mandate masks after Labor Day in the Duval schools. This despite Judge Cooper's ruling in Leon County. Commissioner Corcoran is saying he is going to try to dock the salaries of these officials in Jacksonville. We'll see if that stands up to scrutiny as the legal issues work their way through. Meanwhile, here's an email from Sarah. I have 2 children at Fernandina Beach Middle School, and I'm homeschooling because COVID is just too stressful for one of my children. I want to know why in the entire time that my kids have been in school during this pandemic, I have not once ever been contacted about them being exposed to a positive case. We have another email from Rich in Jacksonville. He has a child at San Pablo Elementary School. On his own volition, he has offered to install special filters in his son's classrooms because his son suffers from anxiety and panic attacks because unmasked symptomatic kids behind him are breathing on him. He has begged the school system to let him help them install these filtration systems throughout the school system. So far, all he's been able to do is get them installed in his son's classroom. So here we are, Representative Smith, in this extraordinary situation where frantic parents are actually doing these kinds of things. They're going to their child's school and on their own dime and time, they're saying, I'm going to install a special filtration system to try to protect my kid because I'm so worried that he's going to be exposed to COVID before the universal masking takes effect in this county. It's just unbelievable.
Right. It is unbelievable because parents, they want to be good parents. They are good parents. They're concerned about the health and safety of their child. Maybe their child is immunocompromised. Maybe they're particularly vulnerable to COVID-19. I know that there's some parents, particularly in the lawsuit that we heard last week against the state, whose children are unable to wear masks because of their physical disability, which underscores how important it is for other students around their child to wear a mask, because we're all in this together and we have to protect each other. And this is about adopting a policy for the greater good. Now, when it comes to the inconsistency with school districts, I got an email from someone in Baker County last night who heard about my lawsuit and was asking for help because she said that it took 20 days for the school district to inform her that her child had been exposed to COVID in a classroom, and that they didn't have any information related to cases in the school. Now, I went to the Baker County Public Schools website, and you can't find the word COVID anywhere on the home page. There's no information. I don't understand how that can happen.
Different
Here in
counties are
Orange County,
different.
They have their own dashboard.
Yeah,
right,
and I don't mean to impugn school districts per se. When I read that woman's email, as we talked about earlier, the school districts do have to go through the Department of Health, which you are in fact suing because there are documented issues with lack of transparency and timely reporting of data. Right. So the school districts are hamstrung in that sense by the state's actions or inactions. And, the school systems know how to do this. For example, I brought this up before. If my kid is exposed to another child with lice in the classroom, everybody knows about it that same darn day. They move heaven and earth to isolate the child with lice and notify every single parent who might possibly have an interest. So it's not as though the school systems don't know how to do this, Representative Smith. They do.
Right. And I don't want to get too off topic, but when it comes to schools and requirements and, what they know how to do, for decades we have required for students to be enrolled in public schools that they have to be vaccinated for things like measles and mumps and polio. Now, we're not there yet with COVID because it needs to be authorized, but it's just a preview of things to come. We have required this of other transmissible diseases. So this idea that people would need to work together, possibly get vaccinated in order for us to promote greater public health is not a new concept. It's not a foreign concept.
Yeah.
We do it every day when children are enrolled in our public schools, except we're actually facing a real-life deadly pandemic right now that we have control over if we decide that we're going to go ahead and take steps to promote public health and everyone's health and safety.
Another tweet, how is it more important for schools to care about peanut allergies for a small percentage of students, but not the health of all students against a deadly virus? In the meantime, we will follow this lawsuit, and we thank you for joining us. Representative Carlos Smith calling from Orlando. He is sued along with the Florida Center for Government Accountability to try to force the state to go back, to releasing a daily COVID dashboard. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me so much. And we'll be putting updates on our Twitter handle at Carlos G. Smith and on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you for having me, Melissa.
All right. Thank you. And much more still ahead. Later, some good news for your Wednesday, including a look ahead to 904 Day this Saturday. But up next.
What would you like to have happen in this situation if it were you over there or if you were transported out of your country? And the answer is you'd like to be treated as a friend, as a neighbor, as a brother or sister.
Why Jacksonville has been chosen as one of the top spots in America to welcome Afghan refugees. We'll be right back.
How can the local news media serve you better? Hi, this is WJCT Editorial Director Jessica Palumbo, and we want to hear what topics interest you, when you'd like to read about them, and how you might want to lend your voice to the stories that your neighbors read. Help us shape the newsletter that we're creating for you. Take our quick survey now at wjct.org/survey. And thanks.
Well, Jacksonville has been chosen as one of the top 3 sites in America to welcome refugees fleeing Afghanistan. Some families have already arrived here in those massive recent airlifts out of Kabul, and more are on their way soon. For more on refugee resettlement efforts and how you can help, we spoke with Matt Smith of Catholic Charities in Jacksonville. What are the impacts of the refugee crisis here in our area? Tell us how people can help Catholic Charities resettle Afghanis that you are anticipating to come here?
Yes, ma'am. Great question. Obviously, this is a humanitarian crisis, and the way our team members here at Catholic Charities feel that how would you feel if you were in this situation? What would you like to have happen in this situation if it were you over there or if you were transported out of your country? And the answer is you'd like to be treated as a friend, as a neighbor, as a brother or sister. And that's the attitude that we've adopted along with many other people. We've had a great outpouring of support thus far, and people ask how can they help, and mainly it's through donations of new household furniture items or furnishings that these families are going to need. Part of our program is going to be helping them set up their first apartment. In most cases, we have advance notice that they're coming, and we will set up that first apartment for them with gently used furniture, with brand new household items, with a pantry and a refrigerator that's already stocked with food. And we pride ourselves that it is that ready when they come. When they start their new life here in Jacksonville, Florida, they're already on the road to self-sufficiency. So we pride ourselves in being able to help to that degree. So people can help. They can go on our Facebook page or our website. There we have information about how they can get involved. Of course, always monetary donations are going to help us fill the gaps, knowing that every penny that gets donated to this program goes directly to a refugee family in their support, in their need. None of that money goes to our administrative or our overhead costs. But we set up a Facebook page as well with a wish list, and that has it's a ready-made shopping list. People can just click on it and they can purchase the items. They will get shipped directly to our office, and we've been putting those in storage right now, anticipating that first need for that first family's arrival, so that we can populate those apartments for them, and they're going to have all the basic living essentials when they arrive here.
So easy. People just need to search Catholic Charities Jacksonville on Google or Facebook, right, and make their donation.
Ma'am. And that is ccbjax.org. And when they do that online donation, they can actually select a drop-down to the program of their preference. In this case, if they select refugee resettlement, we know that it's going to go to the support of the Afghan refugees that we're going to be receiving very, very soon now.
Matt, thank you so much for sharing this information.
Thank you for having me, Melissa. It's a pleasure.
Well, the Afghan refugees add to an already diverse population here in Duval County, and it's getting more so that way all the time. I spoke with Professor Ray Oldakowski of Jacksonville University recently about the census changes in our area and what it means for Duval's culture and politics. So, Ray, tell me about the new census numbers and what they mean for Duval County.
First thing we could look at is Jacksonville as a city. The city grew by about 15% from the 2010 to 2020 census, and that represents about 120,000 people in Duval County or in Jacksonville that we did not have before.
That's a big jump.
Yes, it is. The metro area also grew. Duval, St. Johns, Clay, Nassau, and Baker County all grew. As a total for the metro area, we grew by about 250,000 new people.
So Jacksonville is really experiencing growth, particularly in the pandemic. We saw a lot of remote workers come to our area. We're also seeing a real diversification in North Florida. Tell us about the breakdowns, the demographics, and how they're changing in this part of the state.
Well, similar to what we're seeing across the state, you are seeing a diversification of the population. You are seeing sort of changing roles within the metro area. Duval used to really dominate the population in the metro area. We were not sort of a classic metropolitan area in that the central city was a smaller entity and the suburbs represented a large percentage of the population, mainly because of the consolidation. But as the suburban counties have started to grow, St. John's incredibly over the last 10 years, but also Clay and Nassau, the role of Jacksonville within the county or within the metro area is changing, and we're getting a more developed suburban network.
And what does that mean when a community experiences that kind of change? What sort of conclusions can we draw from this kind of growth?
Well, the other source of data that we can look at besides the census is the Internal Revenue Service puts out information about people migrating from one place to another. And what they do is they track people's tax returns by zip code, and then they check the changes in zip codes and then classify those by county. So what it's meant is that Northeast Florida has integrated itself more into sort of the national network of people moving from city to city. So some of the main suppliers of migrants to Jacksonville, which would be places like New York, Chicago, or Los Angeles, have also been supplemented by other large cities like Houston, Phoenix, and San Antonio, Charlotte, that sort of thing.
That's interesting. Now, the other big talker coming out of these new census numbers is the decline across the country in the white population overall. And we saw that here as well. That is certainly going to be affecting our politics and our cultural battles for years to come. How do you see that falling out in this part of the state?
Right, and one of the things that people have to keep in mind when they look at those classifications is that Hispanic population or persons that classify themselves as Hispanic are answering an ethnicity question as opposed to a race question. So it sort of confounds the way that people interpret that. But we're starting to see an increasing diversification in Jacksonville, more representative of what we see in the rest of the state. Obviously, in South Florida, there's a much larger Hispanic population, but you're starting to see that increase in North Florida as well. And Jacksonville is sort of the focal point or the core of that because we're the focal point or the core of employment.
And it's been interesting, too, to watch the way people have been sorting themselves, Ray. A lot of people moving to St. Johns County because they don't like the demographic changes in Duval, and vice versa. Some people choosing to move into the city.
Correct. We actually saw for the state as a whole, and it's not any of the, I guess Putnam County would be close enough to be considered here for Duval, but a lot of the rural counties actually lost population over the last 10 years. You're seeing people move to the cities and to the suburbs. St. Johns County, as I said, experienced enormous growth rate of about 43% over the last 10 years. That was another 83,000 people. But Duval County added, 130,000 people. So you're seeing people move to cities. You're seeing people move to the suburbs as well. And there's a lot of movement back and forth between Jacksonville, between Duval County and St. Johns County.
And growth overall is seen as a good thing, but at the same time, if a community doesn't keep pace with infrastructure needs and all the other supports you need to manage a growing population, that can cause problems of its own. Jacksonville's dealing with that too.
Right, and that's always been a dilemma for Florida. We're a pro-growth state. Jacksonville's a very pro-growth area. But I guess the theme for Florida has always been to try and have growth management, that we would have people moving to the state, increasing the number of jobs, increasing the quality of living, but also making sure that we protect our resources and that, we're not being overwhelmed by the growth.
Always a concern. Thanks so much, Ray. He's Ray Oldakowski, Ph.D. in the Department of Sustainability, Geography, and Environmental Planning at Jacksonville University. Thanks.
Thank you.
And in a moment, we've got lots of good news for your Wednesday, including how you can celebrate 904 Day this Saturday here in Jacksonville on 904, September 4th. That's coming up next. Don't go away.
The First Coast Free Thought Society book group will discuss A Wolf at the Schoolhouse Door by Schneider and Berkshire, Sunday afternoon, September 5th at Intuition Ale Works on Bay Street. Details at meetup.com/Humanist Book Group.
Lee & Kate's Glass, family owned and operated for 95 years. Lee & Kate's Glass is your source for upgrading your home's glass, from shower doors and mirrors to windows and tabletops. Learn more at leeandkatesglass.com.
A mother's death casts a long shadow over a family's life. Kat Chow was a founding member of the Code Switch podcast team from NPR, and she joins us to tell her story of grief not only for herself but for her extended family spread out across the world. Her book is called Seeing Ghosts, a Memoir. That's next time on Think. Tonight at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
I'm Peter O'Dowd. The levees held in New Orleans when Hurricane Ida came ashore, but it was a different story to the south in the fishing village of Lafitte.
For most of the residents who've grown up in Lafitte and lived with these storms, they never ever thought they would see flooding like this, to the point that they didn't have flood insurance.
Recovering from Hurricane Ida next time on Here and Now.
This afternoon at 1 here on WJCT News 89.9.
The power is still out for more than 1 million homes and businesses in Louisiana. Some parts of the state remain unreachable.
Well, I'm born and raised here in West Bank and Jefferson Parish. This is the worst flooding in the history of my life.
The wind and rain have stopped for now, but it may take days to learn the extent of the damage. The latest from Louisiana and Mississippi, next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, time for a little good news for your midweek. It's our What's Good Wednesdays, where we try to brighten your day, your hump day, with some positive news and notes. Let's begin with 904 Day. It's this Saturday, September 4th, 904, where we want you to support local businesses and then post a picture of your purchase or your activity on social media. Make sure to use the hashtag 904Day. Everybody's getting in on the act this year, including the Chamber, Visit Jacksonville, Downtown Vision, and even the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. They're hosting a very special home game to celebrate 904 Day. We spoke with Scott Kornberg, the Jack Shrimp's PR manager and play-by-play broadcaster.
What else can we do but pay a little bit of a tribute to this awesome city, awesome county, Duval, awesome area. And so we're really doing everything Jacksonville-esque on Saturday, September 4th. We're going to be wearing special Jacksonville Jaguars-like teal, almost like football jerseys for our baseball jersey. We'll be auctioning them off. Actually, the fans, we wore them for a game earlier this season. People got a huge kick out of them. We're going to be giving away a shrimp fanny pack, courtesy of our friends at Ascension St. Vincent's, to the first 2,000 fans to the game. And it's a really fun kind of giveaway. And then it's our weekend of Boom, being Labor Day weekend. So we've got our second of 3 fireworks shows on Saturday as well. So We're really fortunate that the city has continued to embrace the jumbo shrimp through a pandemic, through a continued pandemic now. And so, we're doing some small things to really celebrate this great area that we live in.
Another great event for 904 Day right here at WJCT. Jacksonville Car Culture is hosting 904 Octane this Saturday, September 4th, here at WJCT Public Media. A portion of the proceeds from this cruise-in style show will benefit Hunger Fight, which produces and distributes meals to the city's food insecure. Come on out Saturday from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. here at WJCT Public Media and check out all the great cars. The cost for automotive enthusiasts to display their vehicles is just $10. Free admission for all you spectators. And the next Caffeine and Octane will be coming up later this year. But in the meantime, celebrate 904 Day with 904 Octane this Saturday morning, September 4th at WJCT. Well, kudos to the Northeast Florida Sierra Club group of the Florida chapter. They have 3 recipients of their National Sierra Club Awards this year. The local Sierra Club stayed active during the pandemic. They even held some virtual hikes to keep their members active and engaged. Brian Paradise, a longtime Sierra Club of Northeast Florida outings leader, is the recipient of the National Club's top award for volunteer service. Also recognized Bill Armstrong and Bill Snow, who got national awards for their creativity in sustaining outdoor activities virtually during the long pandemic shutdown. Congrats, guys. And excitement about the Jacksonville 48-hour film project coming up soon with back-to-back events to highlight the local filmmaking community. Kickoff is this Friday at James Weldon Johnson Park. And make sure to check out film premiere screenings at Mosh Brian Gooding Planetarium later this month. You can learn more at 48hourfilm.com/Jacksonville. Well, did you know that September, which kicks off today, is also Classical Music Month? You can enjoy classical music all day long on 89.9 HD2, our HD channel. You can listen at WJCT.org, too, or through the WJCT app. It's all part of our Jacksonville music experience. Meanwhile, author Lucy Antec Johnson is celebrating Classical Music Month with a new book, This Was Toscanini, The Maestro, My Father, and Me. It's all about her late father's career with the great Arturo Toscanini. I spoke with her.
It's almost like a private invitation to a master class with an artistic genius. He takes you inside the rehearsals and the recording sessions and the performances as though you're sitting in the orchestra. And you become witness to Toscanini's musical process. We're often, as an audience, not privy to an artist's process, but this takes us into that special realm. My father was a violinist with the NBC Symphony, which was a symphony especially created for the maestro in 1937, when they had their first radio broadcast. Through the different chapters and the different experiences that my father's firsthand account gives us, it's musical, it's emotional, it's personal, it's moving, and informative.
So check it out, everybody, and enjoy our classical music and all of our channels at the Jacksonville Music Experience. Learn more at jacksmusic.org. And that's our show. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks also to senior producer Heather Schatz, director Josh Torres, associate producer Catherine Hobbs, editorial director Jessica Palumbo, and digital editor Bill Bortsfield. I'm Melissa Ross. We'll be back at 9 a.m. tomorrow, everybody. Catch our podcast up later today. Go get vaccinated, and just as important, keep wearing your mask.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North